Hey, welcome back. Here's a question for you. What is your passion? Today we have a young man who was a teacher for many years. Retired now, and he's following his passion. Oh my goodness, the man builds boats. Today, he's going to tell you all about a boat he built. You're going to see it step by step. My name is Vin DeQuino. Our guest is my friend, Clark Darling. Clark of Kent, not Clark Kent, but Clark
true.
of Kent. You are a boat builder. Tell me a little bit about this amazing passion of yours.
Okay, boat building. It goes back all the way to 1946 when I helped my dad and two of his guys from World War II veterans build a rowboat in his school shop. 1953, my dad and I built a 14-foot motorboat.
Wow.
And that was my first experiences with boats. 1975, the family farm in Unadilla butts right up against the Susquehanna River. And every Memorial weekend, there's a big boat race called the General Clinton Canoe Regatta. Well, I was there one time and I looked and I saw these racing boats, canoes. I said, I got to build one of those. So I asked my brother and he got me a set of plans and I didn't know how to build it. There was a guy in town of Unadilla that was building one, so I stopped by, looked at that boat, talked to him for 15 minutes, and I had all the details. I went home and built that boat. That's the first one. That was a cruiser. The next year, I says, I got to enter the one-man race, so I built a one-man boat. I raced that 25 miles from Otsego to Bainbridge.
Wow.
The following year, I decided I was going to design one of my own design, and I built that, broke it at the starting line, so I didn't race. The next year, I took the boat I had first built, and my son and I raced, and we were in third place, and his left arm gave out. We ended up fifth. That was the father and son group. In 1979, I went and got a super good plan, and I built a two-man racing hull, ready to race. 1980, my son couldn't get there, so I didn't race. That's the only boat I still have left. Anyway, it is what you call stripper construction. And stripper construction means that you take thin strips of wood, this is one right here, and you actually build it out of many of these. You glue them together and you build it all the way up. Okay, that's the canoe business. 1980, I said, I want to build a Adirondack guide boat. Now, I had never seen an Adirondack guide boat per se in one piece. But my dad, our family, we camped from 1930s through the 40s into the 50s at Lake Eaton, which is just north of Long Lake in the Adirondack Mountains. And they always used to talk about the guide boats, the Adirondack guide boats. Okay, the summer of 1980, my wife and we drove up to the Adirondack Museum, which is in Blue Mountain, and I bought that plan, which is over there. If you can get a shot of that, that was designed by a man named John Blanchard, and it's what you call a short boat, and that's what I have down here. It's only 13 feet long. A standard Adirondack guide boat is 16 feet long. And I had fun building that boat. Now I'm going to talk about the details of that boat a little bit later, but now I want to go back to the history behind the Adirondack guide boat. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Adirondack Mountains. So I wrote myself some notes. The Adirondacks are larger in area than the whole state of Vermont. It's 9,300 square miles. And within that 9,300 square miles, there's 30,000 miles of lakes and rivers, 2,300 ponds. So when you get back into the 1800s, how did they traverse that area? There were no roads to speak of, and it was all forest.
Yeah, and mountain.
Yeah, that's really funny about the Adirondack Mountains, because I once looked at a book and it says they're not really mountains, it's an eroded plateau. I says, is it really? But all you had was deer trails, but lots of water. So the primary purpose was to travel and move goods on water, which if you go back anywhere in the world, any country that was near water, they built boats. And if you go down through history, you'll see how ingenious the boats that they built. They used the materials that were on hand locally. And I always admire the construction of a Viking ship. Tremendously skilled and engineered boat. Now, the Adirondack guide boat, some people would look at it because it is double-ended, and it's double-ended for a reason, and that is ease of rowing. But if you look at a canoe, it's double-ended also. So, is this a canoe? It is not. Canoes are paddled with paddles only. And the birch bark canoe is another fantastically engineered piece of equipment. When you start figuring out how they made that thing with birch bark and tree limbs, it's beautiful. Now, the Adirondack guide boat evolved probably around the early 1800s, and here's what was needed. They needed a boat that was lightweight. The reason for being lightweight, so they could carry it.
Yeah, because you have to carry it between bodies of water.
And or around beaver dams, or deadfall, or maybe even a waterfall.
Yeah.
And it was, the purpose of carrying was had to be lightweight. That particular boat there, which is the Blanchard boat, weighs 53 pounds.
Can it withstand a waterfall?
No,
No.
no, it is thin. And I'll talk about that in a minute. The other, basically, it also had to be, and I think I said that, quiet. Now, when they first built these boats, they used what they call lap strake, which means the two boards overlapped each other. That's noisy. That's not quiet. So they had to figure out a way to make it smoother. Secondly, to make it lightweight, they had to put a lot of ribs in it. Where do you get the ribs? Aha. Smart these guys are. But when I built that boat, run you back a second, I built all the ribs in 1980. And family things weren't, I had all these ribs on the shelf, and they sat up there for 30 years.
Are these ribs here?
Yes, these are ribs right here. And yeah, I can show you what this is a half rib. These are interesting how they're made. And all Adirondack boats have these ribs. And I'll get back to that. But when I built that boat, I had all these ribs. In 2010, I became a widow. My wife passed away. Now I said, what am I going to do? So I said, well, do what you've always done in the past. So I went and got the ribs and went online, the Adirondack Museum, and found this book, Building an Adirondack Guide Boat. And this is well written, and it was worth every penny I paid for it, and I follow this religiously. Prior to that, I was going to have to build it the old ways. All right. How are we doing on time?
Okay. We're probably about 12 minutes in, so
Okay, we got plenty of time then.
maybe not. So
Okay. The first boats, when they built them, were made exactly the same as that, with all the ribs except the planking. Now, the planking on the early boats, and I think if you can see that shot, you can possibly see the little thin boards that are there. Well, what was done is, all right, what they did was they took pieces of pine and they cut them down to between 3/16 and 1/4 of an inch thick, which makes them light. And this is just kind of a cross section of one. And the secret was a man by the name of Grant, who was in 1880, developed what they call the beveled lap joint. And this is beveled lap strake. The strake is this piece of wood. Anytime you have a longitudinal piece of wood on a boat, it's not called a plank, it's called a strake. What he did was he beveled it, if you can see the blue, and then the second piece would fit. Did the blue disappear? Okay, but the outside of this is perfectly smooth. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see all those little black dots that I put in there. That is where they would drive copper nails and they would clinch them. And clinching means all they did was bend the points over on the inside and it locked it together and made the thing waterproof. Well, to build one of these boats, you had to hand plane all those angles. A lot of time. And when I first built it, that's how I was going to build it. The ribs, this is a half rib, and this is for a new boat that I'm building. It's not for that boat. It's a Grant boat. It's a 16-footer. But the ribs, now if you can look at this carefully, you'll notice it's curved here and there's a bump right there. Now, if you cut this out of a flat board, the grain would be going the wrong way when you got down to this part, and it wouldn't be strong. So what they did was they dug up all the old stumps left from when they cut down the spruce trees. And they'd slab them, cut them into slabs, so that the curvature into the root part gave them the grain that followed the curve of the rib. Now they had to slab it and then they dried it for 2 years.
wow.
That's air drying. And air drying gets it down to maybe 10%. If you put it in a kiln and dried it, you get it down to 3%. But air dried lumber is stronger. But if you'll notice, that's only 5/16 of an inch thick. It's 3/4 of an inch high. And the strength is tremendously strong. This is a laminated rib. Just to show you how it goes, that was a half rib. So this is number 3. This is in the middle of the boat. And they would fit on a baseboard right underneath here. That was a piece of 1/2 inch thick pine, and that was screwed to this. But there you go. There's a cross section of a boat. You can see how it looks. My big hand's in the way. All right, how do you make bent ribs? That is a long process. Can I get over there?
There you go. Yep, you can walk right over. Just watch your wire as you go.
Where?
Don't catch it on anything.
I
You're
lost
good.
it. I lost it. I stepped on it. This is a long process for making these ribs. If you look at this chart, if you focus in, yes, good. You see these lines here? Well, this is 2 inches apart, these marks, and you draw a whole bunch of those lines. Then you get what they call a table of offsets. And a table of offsets gives you measurements from this point to this point. So I started right here with A, B, C, D, right on through. So you look in that table of offsets and you get that measurement and you put a dot. and you dot, 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 all the way up, all the way down to here. Then you would take a flexible piece of wood and bend it around those and trace it. Then you would reproduce a second line inside 3/4 of an inch. Now you have lofted, that's what it's called when you draw these full-size plans, that's called lofting. You have this. The next step is to transfer that to a piece of plywood. Now you got a pattern. Okay, step 1. Step 2. Next step is you take a piece of, here's 3 pieces of plywood I put together. I need to make a mold to bend all those around, and this should fit right there. I make this. Now, for that boat, I had to make 10 of these.
Wow.
For the new boat I'm making, I make 13 of them because they're in pairs. So you have 2 half ribs in the front, identical 2 in the back. So each half of that boat is identical. And in the middle, you would use 3 or 4 of the same ribs. On a 16-footer, there's 9 number zeros. And then it goes right on up to 12. Next step is you take Sitka spruce I'm using. Sitka spruce comes out of the Northwest. In fact, it's an endangered species. In fact, I understand I got this from Condon Lumber, and he told me it comes from Canada, and they jacked the price up because they charge a 25% tariff. I take 5 of these. Now, they don't really bend well. So what you do is you steam them, 5 of them, and you clamp them around this mold, and you let them dry.
Oh, wow.
Now, you notice how wide it is. The purpose of that is to bend it once, then you rip it after it's all done, glued together, and you rip out ribs that are this thick. Long process. So you need 4 of those. When I glued it together, I had to clamp it and leave it overnight and put about 10 clamps per set of ribs. So it's a long process. It takes a lot of time. In fact, the most amount of time I spent making ribs, these ribs alone took at least, all those ribs, at least a week, 40 hours. Aha! That's that rib. Now, I got the other picture over there. Would it be possible to get that other picture?
Sure.
No, you guys are on the camera. Can you give me that
Yep.
one over there? Because that's important.
Okay. There we go. And we're talking about 10 more minutes.
We got 10 minutes to go?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. The most important shot of this picture is A. The boat is upside down, and it's on what we call a backbone. And that's a whole frame that holds everything together.
And that's all those pieces that you've been showing
And
us.
now you can see all the ribs, and now it's starting to be planked with the little thin strips of wood that are all glued together. That took a lot of time. And each one is screwed to the rib. There's 2,000 screws in that boat.
Oh my God.
And of course, there's screws down through the bottom board down into those ribs in pairs. So now you have installed all that. Next step, sand, sand, sand till you get it smooth. Right here in this B shot, that's fiberglass. It's draped over that hull. That is the secret of the strength, is the fiberglass. The next shot is the first coat of epoxy resin. And you do 2 or 3 of those. Sand those down, and you sand, and you sand, and you sand, and you sand. It's the same as you finish a car. Next, I put on 3 coats of varnish. And after the varnish has fully cured, which takes weeks, you do exactly what you do on an automobile paint job. you wet sand it and buff it. And you end up with what I've got there.
Okay, I can take it. Got it?
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, the boat's built. Now I got to build all the stuff that goes inside.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 seats, front, middle, rear. Those 2 end seats are fixed. The middle seat is movable.
Okay, just
For
watch
a
your way
reason.
there. Good.
They gave me a long cord. As you can see, the oars, everything you see here, I made. This center seat is removable for 2 reasons. One, if you're going to carry it. The second one is if you're going to carry a load. And the oars right now are in the position where one man would maneuver the boat. If you're carrying a load, the oars move up to these oar locks. Now he balances the boat. But going back to this, and this is my point, you can learn how to do anything if you can read a book and understand it. Everything I did here, I
You
got
do the
from-
caning too?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
They had, and I never done it before. And I caned these, and you have to be very careful, over, under, over, under, over, under. And if you make a mistake, halfway down the line, you got to pull it out and do it over because you're weaving. It's the same as weaving. This is a plastic cane, which is water resistant, actually waterproof. To carry the boat, this is the secret of the boat, is a yoke, just like you carried pails of water. This yoke, I also made, fits right here. And the idea is, okay, we put this yoke in the boat, and the opening aims towards the front, and then you tie it in with leather thong, tie it in place. To transport the boat, you take the oars out, everything, your cargo, you have to leave it there where you carry it. If you carried it around the beaver dam, or you carried it from one lake to another, you have to make a couple of trips. But weighing only 55 pounds, it's okay
Yeah.
to transport
Wow.
it. It's not hard.
You're down to about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Is there something we haven't? I noticed that you have some metal plates in there. That's so you don't wear out the wood.
The metal plates are there to protect the ribs because as you're rowing, you're putting
yeah,
a
you'd be
force on
wearing
it,
it
and
out.
you need to
Yeah.
wear it out. Now, the old boats were made with this beveled. The beauty of that was if you damage it, you can take the nails out and cut it
and replace that piece.
repair
Wow. And not, don't have to
it.
replace
One
it.
point about the Adirondack Museum, they own all of them that are left. They went and collected them when they were left to rot. They collected all the Adirondack boats they could find because
Wow.
this is a piece of history,
Yeah.
and it's a very important piece of
And
history.
do people
this,
still today make these boats, right?
yes, if you go online and Google, you can find them.
Yeah.
They're not cheap. This
Yeah.
boat alone, I have 400 hours worth of work in it.
Wow. 400 hours.
400 hours. Took me 3 months. I went from January to March or April making it. And that's just the way it is to make the thing. It takes time. I didn't know all the details of how to construct it, and I did it my way. This new boat I'm building, I'm making it better, and that's what I do.
Yep.
When I build stuff, I'm always trying to teach myself, do it again, and improve it, which is the reason I'm making the second boat. There's things I would change on this boat. The fun is I love to build stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's my whole life. I've been building
Yeah.
for
Oh, you were an industrial arts teacher, yes?
Yeah, that's true. Then they changed it to technology.
Yeah.
And I taught every subject there was. You name it, I taught it. From wood, metal, transportation, mechanical drawing. I taught them all. Much of it is self-taught from books. I have a knack for getting stuff out of books.
Clark, how much would it cost to make a boat like this?
In time or materials? The one I'm building right now, the materials are at $500.
$500.
Yes.
But yet,
Wood
all
prices have
those
gone-
hours and all that time
Right.
and all that expertise.
If you looked up online and for a boat like that, they're going for $14,000.
Wow.
I wouldn't sell it for that, but
Wow. Well, but with all
It's-
the hours
this-
and all the time.
No, this is my catharsis to make this stuff.
Now, unfortunately, just as I promised you, time is flying.
Correct.
So, do you recommend learning how to make a boat like this?
No.
Too much work, too much time,
You need
a lot of experience.
machines. Table saw, joiner, bandsaw, router, surface planer. I have all of those, but it's taken me 50 years to collect them. I have many, many dollars worth of machines, and it's extremely tricky to build one of these boats.
I mean, you're an artist. You're an artist. I mean, this isn't just building something, it's designing, creating.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful boat.
That's
Yeah. Down to 1 minute.
okay.
Final words.
Final words. Doing things like this gets your mind off the world.
Yep.
And it's a catharsis, and you get peace of mind. You're down there quietly building something, using your mind, and that's what you have to do when you get older, is keep that mind sharp. Always challenge. I'm always challenging my skills continually. Never stopped.
Yep. As with most of our guests, this man is a craftsman, and he creates beautiful work. I cannot thank you enough for joining us today. To see this boat up close is a gift, and to create one is even a greater gift.
Yes, it's a pleasure to do
I
it.
cannot thank you enough for sharing your passion with us. It's been a delight. Keep doing what you're doing, and good luck on the brand new boat that you've already started. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being part of this. It's been wonderful having you, and it certainly has been wonderful having you, Clark Darling.
Done.